This is the Egypt that you all used to see: pyramids, pharaohs, camels. But did you know why you shouldn't go inside the pyramids, or that a pharaoh once had 356 wives at once? This is the dark side of Egypt. Egypt is well known for its ancient history with pharaohs and pyramids, but it all started thousands of years before, at 7000 BCE, when settlements were established in the Nile Valley. It wasn't until 4,000 years later, when kingdoms of Upper and Lower Egypt united and created successful dynasties, that oversaw the rise of prosperity and great cultural traditions in Egypt, including the construction of pyramids. Ancient Egypt fell under Assyrian, Persian, and Macedonian rules until 31 BCE, when Queen Cleopatra, the last remaining pharaoh of Egypt, committed suicide and the territory was overtaken by the Romans. The independence of Egypt was not established until 1922, when Fuad I became the king of Egypt. In 1953, the country became a republic with Mohammed Najib as their first president. He was followed by Gamal Abdul Nasser in 1954, until Nasser died in 1970. The country was rampant with disputes after Nasser's death. Even his successor, Anwar al-Sadat, was assassinated by Islamist extremists in 1981. Forcing Vice President Hosni Mubarak into succession. Egypt is still rife with political unrest until today. Former President Morsi, who was elected in 2012 after Mubarak's resignation, was overthrown in a coup in 2013 when hundreds of his supporters were killed during a protest in Cairo. As a result, the former army chief Abdul Fattah al-Sisi won the presidential election in 2014, and Morsi was imprisoned until he died in 2019. On the other hand, Egypt's economy has been steadily growing at a 3.3% annual rate, with a GDP of $404.1 billion and a GDP per capita of $3,698 in 2021. But this doesn't mean that the country is doing well. Egypt is currently under economic woes, with a failing currency, weak property rights, and inflation soaring. Many of the public have said that their standard of living has eroded since the early 2000s. The president has blamed the turmoil on the uprising in 2011 and rapid population growth. The local authorities are not the only thing you need to be careful of when you travel to Egypt. Many tourists have also experienced scams from local guides or people. These scams are so creative you won't see them coming. The first popular scam that foreigners often face is the picture scam. You'll be approached by a local to take their picture using their camera, and when you return the camera, they will purposefully drop it and ask you to pay for it back. Another creative scam is the bird poo scam. While you're walking on the streets, someone will throw a white paste onto your shoulder. Usually a friendly local will help you by cleaning it up while also taking your wallet from your bag or pocket. There's also the guessing game scam. This is a game where a man with 3 boxes and a group of people will try to guess which box has a ball. You'll be so taken in by the game, they will ask you to participate. As you concentrate, someone from the crowd will pick your pocket and strip you of your valuables. This is why many travelers or locals advise people to join a tour or employ a local tour guide when they visit Egypt. That way you'll avoid being taken advantage of by scammers on tourist sites. You might view ancient Egypt as a time when cultural and architectural developments were flourishing. But did you know there's another side of its practices that wouldn't pass current time's normal ethics? One such practice is the harem, which is a place dedicated to bringing together wives and concubines that pleasure the ruler or pharaoh. Pharaohs generally have main wives, secondary wives, and concubines. The royal harem is placed as a part of the royal palace. There was also a traveling harem with the crew for the pharaoh's companions during his many trips around the country or the world. These women were not only bound to the pharaoh by coincidence, many of them were also brought to the harem for diplomatic marriages. Under the new kingdom, pharaohs usually sealed their new bonds of friendship with their sovereigns by claiming one of their daughters for a wife. It was found that during Amenhotep III's rule, he had no less than 356 foreign women being part of the royal harem. Interestingly, polygamy in ancient Egypt is only reserved for the ruler and his family, making it banned for the general public. The harem is also responsible for the upbringing of royal and elite children, creating close personal bonds between the future ruling class and the successor to the throne. The practice no longer exists in Egypt and other nations, with Afghanistan being the only country where harems still exist. The mystery within ancient Egypt doesn't just surround its royal harems, but also inside its pyramids. These ancient buildings have been a topic of interest for hundreds of years, still making discoveries. According to recent research, scientists have uncovered hidden chambers and rooms within the Great Pyramid of Giza. The massive void is nearly 100 feet long and is located just above the Grand Gallery. A similar finding was also uncovered inside Khufu. This is why you should never go inside the gated areas in the pyramids. They have a vast network of underground chambers and water tunnels that you'll be lost in within minutes of exploration. Another reason to not enter the pyramid is the legendary Egyptian curse at Tutankhamun's tomb. The ruler was an Egyptian pharaoh who died before the age of 20. According to a documentary, a group of archaeologists dedicated their lives to uncover the secrets of King Tut in 1922. When the archaeologists found the tomb, they saw the curse written in hieroglyphs on a clay tablet. Death will slay with his wings whoever disturbs the pharaoh's peace. The spell will fall upon anyone who disturbs King Tut's tomb and will cause bad luck, illness, or death. Within 7 years, a total of 22 people who were involved in the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb died prematurely. Some theories have surfaced to offer explanations for this phenomenon, such as the use of poison that was triggered during the opening or bacterial infection in the enclosed atmosphere. Although the pyramids were built as a tomb for rulers and their families, sadly they also took the lives of its workers. According to a new finding, people who worked on site were forced to an early grave and died with deformed bones and broken limbs. An excavation has revealed the tombs of hundreds of workers who worked to build the Great Pyramid for King Cheops. The skeletons were shown to have wear and tear with damaged spines. They also had severed limbs and splintered feet. These workers died between the ages of 30 and 35 years old, while nobles had a much longer lifespan at 50 to 60 years old. Scientists have also found that laborers would occasionally die during their shifts at the pyramids, as there are usually cemeteries near the pyramids for workers and residents. One upside to the finding was that, contrary to popular beliefs, these workers were free men and not slaves. They were paid workers who dedicated their lives to their pharaohs. Believe it or not, before Egyptian mummies were considered valuable and respected, they were treated haphazardly and smuggled to Europe in the early 19th century. Local Egyptians even used pieces of mummies as fuel for fires or ripped the arms and legs off of the mummies for lighting inside the dark tombs. One of the most unique ways that people used mummies was to use their linen wrap as sausage wrap. As a result, an outbreak of cholera was traced back to the facilities and production stopped. Just like pharaohs and their workers had vastly different lives, it seems that opportunity and equality in Egypt still exists. It's estimated that the chances of enrolling in higher education for a child growing up in an advantaged family is 99%, which is much higher than the 6% for a disadvantaged child. This culminates in income inequality in the future, which led to the political unrest and uprising that peaked in 2011. Due to the uprising and economic downturn, Egyptians are struggling to survive and facing a food crisis. Currently, 70% of Egyptians are relying on state-subsidized bread programs. Another factor that worsened the condition was global disputes, such as the dispute between Russia and Ukraine. President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi even said that people should eat tree leaves to survive. Another issue that Egyptians face is water insecurity. The country has an annual water deficit of 7 billion cubic meters, and it's estimated to run out of water by 2025. A contributing factor to their water scarcity is population growth, increasing the need of water per capita. Climate change is also playing a role, due to hotter and drier years on average. The government is now putting effort into saving water by putting fines on inefficient irrigation and treating wastewater. It's also developing and investing in desalination facilities to cope with water scarcity. Another downside is the violation of the right to have freedom of speech. Under the rule of President Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, many Egyptians are detained solely for expressing their views. There's even a campaign called Egypt, an open-air prison for critics, launched to counteract the crackdown on freedom of expression in Egypt by the people. The authorities have passed a law that enables mass censorship of independent news platforms and human rights groups, leading to blockades of websites that were seen as violating the government's policy. The law was passed without any consultation with the public or journalists under the excuse of anti-terrorism measures. Currently, hundreds of Egyptian activists, journalists, members of opposing parties and artists are in jail for speaking up against the regime. The reason for their imprisonment are mainly due to social media posts and having a history of activism. For example, 35 people were detained during a peaceful protest for the rise of metro fares on counts of unauthorized protest and joining a terrorist group. The treatment is not exclusively done to the locals, as plenty of foreigners have experienced similar issues. A food blogger had their camera equipment confiscated even though he had paid and gained a permit from the government weeks before the shooting schedule. In the end, he had to use his iPhone to record the entire trip and have his footage censored by local police the entire time. When their crew wanted to leave the country, they had to pay more money to get their camera equipment back. Egypt is a country filled with wonders and cultural heritage that still draws the interest of the world, but it has its own set of challenges that weigh heavily on its people. Let's see if Egypt can overcome all these issues and become the beacon of light that they were during ancient times.